Next, we'll discuss secondary research in the professional context. As English majors, you are all familiar with the process of researching for writing class papers. Like I mentioned earlier, it usually involves studying some target text and then finding interesting academic takes on that text or a set of problems or themes that the text explores. Either your professor suggests some secondary articles or you spend time in the library's online databases and use the search function. The methods you use to conduct secondary research on the job are largely the same as those for academia. In fact, as professional researchers, you have more legitimate sources at your disposal than you do as an academic simply because reliability does not depend on peer review. In academic work, the sources you pull from must be academic, which means they must be peer reviewed by other folks in that specific field. As a professional researcher, it's more acceptable to use popular, reliable sources, such as newspapers and personal testimonies. Furthermore, depending on where you work, you may have access to company-specific databases and archives. You can also use government and business resources more frequently as a professional writer. The book lists some reliable government and business sources on page 116 that you can visit when conducting professional research. In this section, I focus on tips and tricks for optimizing your searches in databases that include tons of resources. These are methods you can use for both academic and professional research. The tips and tricks sound quite general, and you may be broadly familiar with them now. However, I would like to get in the weeds a bit and demonstrate how to keep building on and tweaking initial searches to dig out the stuff you really need from a massive pile of information. I'd also like to show you how you can let the research results guide you and send you in the direction that you may not have otherwise anticipated. So I'm currently in Maine visiting my brilliant best friend, and in brainstorming what topic to use as an example for how to maximize your database searches for Project 3, I started thinking about the kinds of writing that happen in gig work apps like Uber, Lyft, Instacart, Uber Eats, and, of course, Rover, the pet sitting app. Like you already know, my parents are caring for Booley for most of the time I'll be gone. But there are a few days where I have enlisted the services of Rover workers. So it's a contract labor app. They get paid per time they visit my cat. And they're going to have to deal with my evil boy. I wonder what kind of sources are out there, academic or otherwise, that discuss the role of writing for these kinds of gig apps, the sort where you can contract your labor out for small fees. Just like when you were designing an interview, to get started with secondary research, you begin by articulating your broad research goals. For Project 3, your goal will be to understand the landscape of some kind of professional writing work. For the purpose of this example, I'll say that my purpose is to understand how and in what ways professional writing might intersect with gig economy contract labor apps. I'm going to use our library website to search for relevant, reliable sources of information to help me get to my research goal. Many professors or librarians might suggest that you go to our library website and seek out specific databases that house information particular to your search. That's absolutely valid. For example, if you're researching medical writing, you might head to PubMed and enter relevant search terms there to target your results to include medical journal articles only. So this is our database site on the library website. And over here, these are some of the popular databases. So when you go here, you're going to filter only the information that's in medical journals. This one is, they have a short little description. So some people are going to say, use the database that's specific to your particular research needs. Totally valid. I have found, however, that while you may get tons of results at first, you're better off using the advanced search function, which cross-checks all the library's available databases. I will frame the remaining conversation around using that tool. First, know that search number 1 is not your last. Treat your first attempt at looking for information on a database like you're on a bus tour of a new city. You are just riding by to see what's available for you to do in the city, but you know you'll have to go back and look online to see what's open when, what costs how much, and then you'll have to plan your route at a later time. In this first section, you're going to look through things as if it's a literature review. You're going to keep a running list of the articles that you've looked at, and this is going to inform an evolving research question. So the goal is to cast a wide net for information to figure out what other people have already asked about the topic and said about the topic, and understand what aspects of the topic are generating some interest. So, to actually get started, once you have that initial research question, brainstorm key words associated with the goal and question and enter them into the advanced search boxes. So you're going to have to be playing with words and phrases and modifiers and limiters. So again, how does professional writing intersect with the gig economy and contract labor apps? Some of the words that I'm going to put in are professional writing, gig economy, I'm going to start with these, also contract labor apps. And I'm also going to limit the year of my search because we know that these apps have only really developed in the later years. Sometimes you want to do a targeted search from like 1942 to 1953 if you're trying to figure out what people said about something in that era. But often when we're looking at really contemporary information, we might want to limit that date range to more recent stuff. You also want to put quotation marks around professional writing so that you don't just get hits for all things that say professional and all things that say writing. So here's what it looks like. You go to the advanced search function on the library's website, and you want to search everything. Here's where you can limit the date range. So I did 2020 to 2022. I wanted really up-to-date information. And then I added all of the things here. Now you can click the drop-down menu so that you specify that it's the author's name or the title or some of the subject terms. So you can really play around with this. This is something that, it's going to be a first attempt and you're going to see what happens. So this was my first attempt. Here are the things that I put in. And it turns out that I seriously limited my search such that even if I used the advanced search, only one result came up with those specifications. And when I actually investigated that source, it turns out it had nothing to do with writing for apps, and instead was all about how using these apps as workers constitutes a literacy practice. It doesn't really get into what I want to write about. However, I may be able to find a way to fit it into my topic later, depending on how I end up writing or what I end up writing about. It still pertains broadly to my topic, so I am going to save it in a folder for later. I went back to the drawing board and changed up my search a little, substituting writing for professional writing and taking out the contract labor. I also expanded the search to be 4 years as opposed to 2. I immediately got more results this time, so I got 587 results. I'm still not sure if they'll be immediately helpful, but I have more to work with. So one important tip for keeping track of all your articles as you are searching is to use the library database's pin function. So to do that, as you're searching, you see this thing. It's a pin at the top right of the source. You click that pin. Once you do so, it pins it or it saves it for you to find later. To find your pinned article, just click this pin at the top right and it brings you to your favorites. On that initial search, your objective is to shape up a body of knowledge about your topics. Once you've pinned some articles, go back and look at their abstracts to get a sense of what the main ideas are within. You should then start a document of some kind, so a Google Doc, a notes app, whatever, to keep general notes about what you're learning. You end up generating a kind of literature review, which gives you a sense of the major issues out there and often suggests gaps where you might have something interesting to add or say. Once you've gotten the lay of the land, you'll need to conduct a second, a third, or even a fourth search where you are better equipped to find specific information you're looking for. After doing the initial searches, you now have an idea of what language to use. You can keep playing around with terms or use terms that you found when you were reading the articles or their abstracts. Maybe gig economy is not the term that we should use after all. Maybe we would find that there's a specific app that we would want to research, and we can enter that term into the search. You might also find that there is one particular newspaper or journal that keeps coming up with your favorite sources or the ones that are most relevant to your topic. Maybe you decide that you want to go to that specific journal or newspaper and target your search. In some cases, however, you notice there is some person who is doing the best work on that topic that you're interested in. You should pay attention to that and consider reaching out to them to schedule an interview. Or you could even Google their name and find where all of their work is housed. Lastly, allow your research question to change from your first iteration. Maybe you find an interesting thread in the articles that pop up and it's taking you down a different path than you thought. This is not a bad thing. In fact, your learning about what's of interest to the community of scholars and thinkers is a good thing, and maybe this means you can contribute meaningfully to the conversation with your own work. So there is a ton more to say about professional research, both primary and secondary, but these are some of the ways you might begin to expand your own research methods to meet the needs of professional environments and to enhance your academic research as well. As always, feel free to reach out with any questions, thoughts, or comments, and happy week 6.